Hi, welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case. Welcome if you're currently here in the live chat. I appreciate it. Take in mind, if you do need to escape from any chaos or drama, feel free to check my previous video out, somewhat more light-hearted. There'll be a link down below in the pinned comment section. Today, we are returning back to the Dylan Rounds case, focusing heavily in on it, doing an analysis and summary of all the key points talked about in the most recent Candice Cooley interview, which occurred 1 to 2 days ago on Doug's channel. No thanks. I can provide a link to that as well down below if you want to look at it visually and look at their body language and their faces as they talk, okay? But yeah, I've noted down all of the key points which stand out to me, whether it be the odd contradiction, key development, never talked about information from what I've heard of, that type of stuff. And as we go along and I read it out, you can share your own thoughts, opinions down below in the live chat, okay? So we'll get into that in a second. As regarding that Jim Terry TV interview with Chase Venstra, I know some people were saying, when is it happening? Well, I believe it's already happened. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's just because of the title of the video. It's already come out, but I'm sure when I hovered through it, it didn't really seem to be of an interview. And then I saw another comment just recently saying content has been moved from the public, view and shifted onto members only. Now, I think that must be the case because when you look at Jim Terry's other videos, live streams, they're not there publicly visible, right? So I guess they've all been shifted to members only. Now, to some people that might be annoying. Supposedly the motive behind it is to avoid, I'm not saying it, I'm just relaying what other people think or know of, okay? Not me. That it's been done like that to prevent Salty Pancakes from doxing everyone that supports Jim Terry in the live chat. I don't know, but I guess that's what's been talked about recently. I know some people were saying there was some kind of meltdown, arguments and all of that. I mean, I've been completely unaware of it, right? I had no clue what's going on in recent time. Just been focusing on my videos, right? But yeah, I guess we'll see how things play out. Salty Pancakes himself has made member-only videos and privatized other videos in the past when he was supposedly getting attacked and questioned. So it's interesting how you get similar behaviour of privatising certain videos at different points in time. As for the Shack lady, some of her videos have disappeared, reappeared, disappeared, and it's supposedly explained by her editing stuff, cutting bits out, trimming things down, and then all the other videos disappear as well. Something like that. I mean, it's a little bit messy how things change and disappear. It's not exactly stable, is it? With the Kenny Veach case, when people showed up, created content, then deleted it, changed video formats, titles, changed in behaviour, it didn't do much good, right? It made you doubt yourself. It made you doubt the person, thinking, what's going on? But yeah, move that aside. Let's move on into the latest information by Candice Cooley and what has been talked about, okay? Now, take in mind this information, this talk is based around the most recent search for Dylan, the big push. You remember that, the big push before winter, and that's with Research, Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds, maybe the odd other person, and the mob crew, Chris, okay, all got together, as well as the K9 Unit 2, with the drones as well, heading out there, searching about, okay? That's what it's talking about. Let's get on to the first key point. Candice Cooley said, the search has lasted for about 6 days. 6 days? quite a bit, especially if you're doing it for long hours each day, right? So you get an idea of the length of time, right? Candice Cooley also said during that time, the FBI assisted a little on the odd day. That's interesting. That's good. I mean, it's a positive. You got a little bit of authority, a higher presence, observing, taking notes maybe. It's always good to have that little bit of backup, right? Just in case if anything went wrong or anyone else came in or there was resistance, maybe the FBI could back things up or defend yourself, right? So that's good. FBI, although not the main ones, such as like Box Elder County in the past, because the FBI couldn't due to the way it was structured, FBI still cooperating and still assisting, which is a positive. I know some people will say it's not a surprise, but you know, it's just worth highlighting. It is a key point, right? It's another key group that have been involved. Also, before we go on, what I just want to make note of is, although this interview was about 1 hour, 10 minutes long, right? Much shorter. All the other interviews have been around 2 hours, maybe a bit longer. So it was a bit more efficient this time. Didn't have to, listen as long, which is useful. But interestingly, there was probably the same amount of notes, if not more notes and information coming from this 1 hour video than the 2 hour ones. So that does say a lot, okay? So let's continue on about that recent search. In terms of the weather, Candice Cooley described it as snowing, the rain and the cold creeping in. It's approaching winter, right? You've seen it with Montello, highlighted by Ty Corbin, visually demonstrated by Scott Nuttall. The snow might have stopped and start here and there. They did say that winter has come, or the weather that's been recently appearing has come earlier than expected. So you take that in mind, it would have halted or acted as a roadblock, an obstacle trying to search for Dylan. You can't control the weather. You can kind of predict it and make some precautions, but unexpected things can happen, right? So it can get a little bit messy. Now, aside from the weather, Candice Cooley did state that there will be another big push with the dogs before winter, preferably, right? It makes sense. You want to do as much as possible before it's completely impossible, right? Candice Cooley did say that the temperature needs to be above 34 degrees Celsius, I think I'm correct in saying, for the dogs to be used. Why is that? I mean, practically speaking, you don't want it to be very, very cold because it might harm the dogs. But I think they're talking more about the senses, the sniffer dogs. Maybe if it's too cold, it impacts how they sniff out things, maybe. The coldness negatively impacts it. I mean, you think about with the whole Ellie situation in the past saying, oh, because it's raining, it's going to lower the chances. So, that type of stuff. And also when it does rain, that can bring the temperature down at times. So you can see a bit of a correlation, right? I mean, maybe in the Ellie case, there was a few more excuses used. But as you can see, being clearly stated on here, 34 degrees Celsius or above, right? And then the dogs can be used. Now, let's just bring it up very quickly. I'm not exactly saying this. It's more of a very, very weak question. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. Taking my language. So with that being stated about the sniffer dogs, they can be used, but they can't be used if they don't meet these conditions. I assume Candice Cooley understands that and there's no problem. That's why they want to do it as soon as possible before the temperatures go any lower with winter. If that's the case and she understands that, why did she get a little bit defensive in the past when it came to the LE, supposedly saying, we've got to delay the dog search, the sniffer dogs, the cadaver unit, the bloodhound, because it's raining and the rain reduces the chances of being able to find Dylan. If the temperatures were below 34 degrees Celsius back then, and it wasn't to do with rain, and the LE said, we can't use the dogs right now, the temperature's too cold, it won't work, would Candice Cooley be as understanding if the LE said that, similar to how it's been talked about recently by that canine unit? Do you think she would understand, or do you think there would be a level of contradiction going on there? Very key point worth taking into mind, okay? Now, we move on to the next point. Candice Cooley also said, coinciding with this search, she wants to search places a little bit out there. How's that worded? How do you interpret that? Well, a little bit out there could be interpreted as distance, further than expected, or it could be interpreted as locations you just wouldn't think of, wouldn't expect Dylan to be there. And that could be still within the land near to Dylan's farm. Okay, does that make sense? I mean, there's no harm in checking different locations out, as many as possible. Might as well cover as much, right? Makes you think, I wonder what type of locations are a little bit out there, as quoted by Candice Cooley. You can share your thoughts and predictions down below. Do I have any on the spot? Well, the one I would describe would be a little bit out there, Montello, both distance and not likely. The likelihood of Dylan being there, probably not as likely now, but that would tie in with the wording of how she stated it. That's just my prediction, but I feel that they probably aren't referring to that. Might be talking more about away from the farm, but still within Lucin. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you got to take in mind when it comes to these locations, and I don't know if I mention it later on, but Candice Cooley did say that we're going to look back over places. We've already ticked some locations off, like done, green tick, nothing found there. But we want to comb over other locations and return back to them again, and then maybe again, and then see from there. And there's no harm in doing that, right? But do you see how there's like, would you call it a level of doubt? I don't know. Because maybe in the past, Candice was like, he's not there, it's the grain shed. That's where it all happened. This is exactly where all the evidence was found. This is it. So why are you suddenly going a little bit out there, a little bit out here, all over the place now? It's almost like going backwards on that certainty, right? I mean, it can be mirrored by the LE and when they conducted their searches, you know, searching about, okay, they did the thing, but did they look thorough enough? Or was it a half-hearted attempt? Possibly, because you've seen how they've handled evidence and how things have developed over time. They probably didn't search that well. You look at Jim Brenner, you look at Don Hateley. Yes, they could be highly involved in the case, but just in terms of, put that aside, the simple go out there looking for Dylan, they didn't even bother. I know there's probably reasons to why, but they didn't bother searching, but they said they did. The LE have said they've searched the area, but did they truly? All these levels of doubts and possible lies. Away from the Dylan Rounds community, the actual people in the internal investigation and case are playing up as well. So that could be another reason to why the likes of Candice Cooley, the family and others might want to check back at locations. I mean, no harm in the dirt mound as well. I mean, could that be what it means by a little bit out there? You know, we've checked the dirt mound, we've dug it up, we found nothing, the boots are there, nothing's been found, but you could still be there. I don't know. I guess we'll see how things develop. You share your thoughts down below, okay? Now, another key point, okay? Another key event or upcoming event. Candice Cooley said she wants the phone data of Dylan's Dylan's phone, which was found in Lucin Pond, to be reanalyzed. I assume it's more to do with the ping arc. What was it called? The RTT ping or something. Has an arc on it. Reveals certain information, but she wants it checked again just in case anything has been missed. I mean, there's no harm, right? Maybe check even deeper on the phone to see if anything is present. I mean, in the past, Candice Cooley family said they cloned Dylan's phone, checked his accounts, didn't find anything odd, but you never know. I mean, this whole returning back to certain items of evidence, having them reassessed and analysed, has it been done before? Absolutely. Maybe a month or two ago, Candice Cooley left a post on Facebook saying, like, the truck, maybe the trailer, if I'm correct, were taken back to be reanalysed and other bits of evidence, and that was back then. Never really heard much word on that after that. I don't think Candice Cooley ever provided an update on that stuff. So what I assume is those bits of evidence back then that were taken back in to the labs to be assessed, analysed, they did find something. It has strengthened that case from then till now, which has been briefly talked about quietly in a way, as you know, such as Cade Palmer and some of the Box Elder County people, you know, in that article when they were talking about the case and evidence and ties, forming a strong case. Maybe that came from reanalysing evidence back then. And they couldn't say anything publicly because it's important. They found something. Maybe the same could happen with the phone data. We'll only find out when it's been analysed, and some development might happen down the line. You can share your thoughts down below. I don't know if I should have done a poll by now. I've been a bit naughty. Okay. I'll do a quick poll now. Do you think if the phone data of Dylan's is reassessed, reanalysed, do you think they will find any important leads / evidence? Okay. Vote if you want to up above. Okay. So yeah. Now, another very important thing, and I don't know if it ties in with an article, but I'm going to read it anyway in the next video, probably just a brief one, okay? I can't quite remember if it does tie or not. But basically what was talked about in Doug's live interview with Candice Cooley was there is a new documentary coming out, and it's to do with Dylan Rounds. I don't know how you take that, positive or negative, but it's by Paramount TV, I think it's called Paramount. And the title of the documentary is called Never Seen Again, Dylan Brown's documentary. I don't know when it's coming out. I think Doug from No Thanks provided a link to it on his video in the comment section or description. As I said, I'll provide the link so you can check Doug's video out and then also check his link out as well to the documentary. Do you think this is a good idea, having a documentary about Dylan at this stage? Do you think the documentary should have been made after they found Dylan? What are your thoughts on it? Share it down below. I mean, apologies about the polls. They're very short, so you've got to vote very quickly, okay? But I'll do another poll right now, okay? Do you think making a documentary about Dylan at this point is a good idea? Good or bad? Leave your thoughts. Sharing my thoughts, my opinion, I'd say it's good in the sense that it's another way of spreading awareness about him. So even more people know about the case, spreading awareness in general. If there have been other documentaries done on other missing people, then I guess the same can happen here. Candice described Paramount as being professional and doing it correctly. I guess we'll see how things play out there, how the information is provided, how it's talked about, the contradictions may be highlighted and changes of information. We'll see about that. I believe that it excludes all of the online drama, which I guess is a good thing, right? I do feel maybe some people might be a bit pissed off, thinking, oh, are the family benefiting financially from this documentary? Are they being paid in some way? I don't know. Nothing of that was spoken of. You might have to ask about question-wise. My thoughts, I'd probably say if any money was made, it probably was donated to Canine Unit or Equisearch or, given out elsewhere. But in a way, I can understand if some people had first-hand doubts, thinking, oh, is there some kind of exploitative thing going on? I don't think that's the case, but I can understand why other people would think of that, okay? I wonder if Jim Terry or Salty Pancakes would get slightly frustrated, because I assume that they're not involved in this Paramount documentary about Dylan. Could Jim Terry be thinking, hey, you hired me earlier on. I came out with this bit of evidence, this point. I talked about this. I advised you to get the cameras out, this and that. And why am I not involved in this whole scene? Why have I not been interviewed or included in it? I don't know. All things could go off negative here and there. What I will say is, I'll just have another drink because my mouth's fucked. Probably from yesterday. What I will say is, I've seen this happen before. Not the negative part, but just the fact that a documentary has been made about a missing person. And once again, it links to Kenny Veach. This is what I mean, several links. But yeah, with Kenny Veach, and you would have heard me talk about it briefly. I think it was called The Mojave Nightmare, or Nightmare in the Mojave Desert, something like that. And it's about Kenny Veach. Take in mind, Kenny Veach has received significantly less coverage than most of the missing people cases. It was like, he went missing, family, no posters, not much, flat for several years. 2014, Kenny Veach went missing, right? I think it was November 10th. And it was 2021, November the 28th, when a documentary suddenly came out all of a sudden. All the different family members got involved, shared their side of the story, talked about it, including one of the key individuals who was also in contact with me, sharing key information at the time, right? So that was kind of interesting. I made predictions at the time saying, I wonder how it will go. I made my predictions, obviously, before it came out. And for most part of it, it was negative. I predicted that it's going to put the slant on military intervention, Area 51 conspiracies, aliens, all that wild talk. Maybe governments are after Kenny Veach getting kidnapped by them because he saw something he wasn't supposed to, that type of stuff. And then I said, it wouldn't surprise me if the odd family member who may have known the truth or known more than everyone else was disregarded, may have been treated as the crazy one, made them appear all weird, so that when the viewers watch the documentary, it will put them off and it will make them not believe in what that one family member says. Guess what the outcome was? Exactly how I predicted it. So, there you go. As for this documentary on the Dylan Rounds one, what would my predictions be? Well, I feel it's going to exclude all of the online drama, which is probably good. But I do think there's a prediction that it could trigger a slight negative response from certain YouTubers claiming, why am I not involved? Look at what I've done. I've helped as well. I think that could happen. The actual contents of the documentary, my predictions would be, take in mind, I think it's a two-part documentary, okay? I don't know how long it is. Could be like a 2-hour one and another 2-hour one, something like that. But I'd say the content will probably be telling the story about Dylan, probably a backstory, leading up to what happened to him disappearing, and then just talking about some of the key suspects. But I think they're going to keep it narrow. For some reason, I just think they're going to just centre in and focus on only a few individuals, like mainly Brenner, obviously, Don Hateley, a bit of Kurt Wadsworth, mainly Chase Venstra, even though he's supposedly innocent, possibly Robert Aviles, but a very small portion. You know what I'm saying? I think they might exclude Kurt Wadsworth to an extent, Taylina, and then some of the other Montello locals or something. I just think they're going to really focus in on Brenner, right, and the odd other individual. Will Ty Corbin and Lance Kelly appear in it? I have no clue. I can imagine Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds appearing because they've done interviews. They might even use interview footage, maybe Heavy D's, who knows? I don't know if it's actually been recorded already. I don't know the release date, but something is going on, right? And it'll be interesting to see the outcome, right? You can share your thoughts down below, obviously, or in the vote section to what you think and the outcome of it. Would it have been useful if it was done much earlier on? Yes and no. Yes, because it spreads more awareness. It could lead to a catalyst quicker in finding Dylan. But the negative is you would have only known certain information back then with the case developing. Even though it has gone on far too long, there might be more to talk about now than there was back then. So that's why some things are dragged out, right, until they can be covered properly in some kind of video or stream, whatever, right? So be on the lookout for that. See how things go there. Now, as for this recent search, Mob Crew Chris, he's been out there in the past, as he said, with his cousin. No leads, just roaming about the land of Lucin with the drone, trying to make sense of the place and look for Dylan, just like how other people have tried, right? As for this time, it was the first time meeting up with Candice Cooley. Seemed like a positive experience, no problems, no argumentations. It seemed to work, right? You can leave your own thoughts to that, what you think down below. Anything else? Yes, we move on to the next point, and this is kind of an important one. When questioned about the wash, the location of it, when Doug asked, Candice Cooley was basically keeping it a secret, the location of the wash, or the section of the wash investigated. So, we're not going to tell you. Most likely, the area they searched in, there's probably no crime scene tape, right? I mean, it would make it too obvious then if anyone did try exploring. But it makes sense to why they're keeping it quiet, because whether it be Salty Pancakes visiting out of pure interest, or maybe Lance Kelly possibly, I think it's embedded in Candice Cooley's mind why she doesn't want to reveal it, because those are the type of people that would search about and ruin it and contaminate. I'm not saying that. There's a few more key points down below which tie on with this whole conversation, so hold on, okay? Candice Cooley did say the wash. It's a different area, different wash, I assume, the way it was worded. Yeah, there's several washes out there. I can't quite identify every single one on the maps because some look more visible and noticeable than others. Some look like little rivers, some look like roots in the ground as they're spread out. You know, I'm not an expert with that stuff, but I guess if the odd person was to look at my map analysis videos or even go on Google Earth themselves, they'd probably be able to point possible washes out. Do I need to do that right now? I mean, I have tried roughly, and we did come across the odd one in Montello, and it was interesting with the images and the 2017 flood in Montello. That was all good to look at and to understand the force and power of the water and the erosion and damage it can cause, definitely. But I think as for the Lucin wash or washes, if it's a secret, for now, it should be kept as a secret for now, just to prevent any more fuck-ups, right? It makes sense. I mean, when everything goes wrong, and then when the one smallest thing goes right, you want to try and protect it in a way, or maintain it. So I kind of understand. Do you think that Candice Cooley is holding back more now than she did before in terms of locations and evidence? I think it's kind of been relatively the same. Maybe a little bit stricter now, but if things are moving in a certain direction and you're racing against time, you're probably going to be extra cautious and strict in a way, right? So yeah. Let's move on to the next point, and this is where it ties in with what I said. Candice Cooley was saying that she's infuriated by the whole Lance and Ty finding the bag of bones. I mean, it's more to do with many other people afterwards messaging her on Facebook and asking, have you heard about the bag in bones? The bones in the bag. Have you heard about it? Why are you not doing anything? You know, do you not care? You know, that type of harassment in a way and over questioning. I mean, the bones in the bag were cleared up and debunked. Ty and Lance coming across them. I mean, it's worth documenting and handing them in, but I guess Candice Cooley didn't approve of how they handled it at the time. And I can't remember the exact word, but basically saying that the crazy people out there like Ty and Lance searching about, that's basically what Candice Cooley said about them. Ty and Lance, crazy people out there searching. Now, the only thing I've not heard Candice Cooley say too much, right? Or I don't think she said it at all. Well, she might have criticised Ty and Lance for searching and doing their thing and not really helping much. Candice, from what I can remember, has not said, hey, you, Ty and Lance, aside from messing about searching, which isn't helping, I don't know why you're searching in Montello. You're in the wrong area. You know, you're wasting your time. Candice Cooley, despite criticising Ty and Lance, has not come out with that example line. Kind of interesting, right? I know Candice Cooley has said herself that it's in Lucin. This is where it all went down. I believe Dylan is within the area. Well, if that's what you think, then why did you not directly call Ty and Lance out and say, hey, appreciate what you're doing, but it's not helpful because we know from evidence Dylan is not over there. So either stop or come over here and help and assist. That wasn't really said from what I can remember. You can correct me if I'm wrong down below, but yeah, it does make you think certain wording and sentences have not been used, right? If you wonder why I'm looking over there, so there's a rainbow in the sky and it goes all the way across and then there's a big dark cloud, okay? So yeah, some interesting points and referring back to previous things, right? What else? Yeah, the bit about people calling Candice out. How do I word that? Kind of like what I said before, calling her out, accusing her of this and that, being suspicious of her. Candice saying, you know, those people should be ashamed of themselves. I mean, I guess it depends what they've seen, right? If the viewer or general public have seen something by Candice Cooley, how she's acted or behaved, or a video depicting her in a negative way, or an observation made and it's first time impressions by that person, and that's what they see, they're going to internalise that. If they saw Candice Cooley in a positive light from the beginning, then they're probably going to maintain that positivity and outlook on her. But if you came in late to the case and then just randomly heard on the spot, yeah, she's made lies up, she's made contradictions, this, that, negative, it's like, whoa, I think I'll be a bit cautious of this individual. I'm a bit, ooh, I don't know. You know, first time impressions can have a big impact on someone. When it came to me, interestingly, when I first came in, there was many other people who were very strict and focused on the idea Candice Cooley is bad and negative and there's darkness going on with the family. I didn't quite think like that, but other people did. And take in mind, I came off, moved on, transitioned from the Kenny Veach case in which there was certain corrupt possible family members and threatening behaviour and much more. So, you know, with that cautious level, that alert level, and I was still balanced early on when transitioning into the Dylan Rounds case. That is a key point because, you know, if you've got previous experience in a certain way, you might take that on board when it comes to another case. I tried not to, but with time I did notice some similarities and patterns with the different cases, okay? But yeah, there you go there. Is there anything else? No, not yet. There's something else I can talk about, but that's later on. Okay. Apologies when I'm looking down, it's because the notes are down here. And as I say, notes, little bullet points like that. A bullet point and then I carry on talking, okay? Just thought I'd share it with you so you know. What else is there? Current search had been done. Yeah, so Candice Cooley said, the recent search, the 6-day one, with the resources they had, such as the drones, the K9 unit, should have been done 3.5 months ago and continued on up to now, approaching winter. That's if it would have lasted that long, who knows, but basically what's gone on recently should have happened back then. And we have brought that up into question in a previous video where I said, you know, I did it as a poll. Should this have been done back then, if possible? And most people said yeah. And I think I also added a point on saying, would it have yielded more successful results? And I think majority of people said yeah, or partially, right? I mean, makes sense. If things are more fresh, if the land hasn't been disturbed as much, there's not been as much traffic if you do it early on, people visiting, you might have better chances, right? Candice Cooley said the only reason why it didn't happen back then is the LE shut them down, resisted, said you can't do this and you can't do that. That's what she said. But to be honest, you know, if the LE didn't treat it as a crime scene, no tape put up, they weren't there 24/7, no kind of like surveillance presence or like that by the police, then I don't know why they should be so resistant, because if they're not there on the scene, then I don't know why Candice Cooley was restricted, unless there was something else going on behind the scenes, but yeah. And yeah, just to tie it in with this recent search, Candice Cooley said, you know, aside from that second big push upcoming, they will basically search until the weather, you know, gets bad, right? So they'll do as much as they can in between. Candice Cooley did say there was like some kind of talks going on in the background with like some of the people involved and arrange, I guess, another search at some point. Makes sense. And tying in with the whole living conditions situation, Candice Cooley said during that search, they stayed in campers at Dylan's farm. As for Chris from the mob crew, he stayed in Wendover. You know, I don't know if my motel analysis helped with Chris when staying at Wendover, because as we know, that was probably one of the first places, if I'm correct in saying, where the whole motel analysis came from when looking at Dylan and Brenner doing custom farming and staying over at locations, right? That's where it all begun. And from that motel, we found someone headbutting the door in with a big dent, which was recorded and documented from 2019 to 2021, and it was not fixed. We saw a tap head in a bathtub, half fallen off, held back by sellotape on the tiles, and much more dodginess. That was the extent of Wendover. People have said Wendover is quite bad for crime. I don't know if that's exactly true, but that's what's been said. But from the looks of it, Chris managed and survived in Wendover during that period, so it made sense. He said it's about an hour drive from there to Lucin, which it probably is. I mean, I have done distance check, depends which way you go, there's shortcuts. You want to check more about that, feel free to go back on my channel back then, because it's all there, right? I've done the distance, mapped it out, different routes and stuff like that from place to place, right? There and back. So yeah, had the campers out there. It makes sense in terms of the situation, the setting. You're going to be there for 6 days. You want to be on site or as close as possible, because if not, and you've got to cover many, many miles every single day there and back, it's very impractical, right? So I understand that. Now, this is a very interesting point. Candice Cooley said Box Elder County Sheriff's Office approved of this recent search. This external volunteered group, and these people all getting together as one with the different resources outside of Box Elder County's reach and touch. They allowed it to happen. It was like, fine, yeah, you go and do it. Isn't that interesting? No resistance, but also, to take in mind, no assistance. That's how Candice Cooley said it. No resistance, but no assistance. Good and bad, positive, negative. Kind of neutral in a way. So basically, you've got your own free will and freedom to explore and go here and go there. And Candice Cooley praised the people that were present there because they listened to every order of her. When she said go there, they did. When she said check over there, they did. So they followed her every move. Now, I don't know if that sounds a bit narcissistic, that, but that's just like how it was worded in the live stream interview. Okay. Is it interesting Box Elder County approving it? Yeah, it seems submissive. It seems weak, considering Box Elder County were being very awkward at the start and even towards the end. And yet now it's just completely, yep, we're done. Keep quiet, we're done. I mean, interesting, isn't it? Also, Mark Ortiz died recently, passed away. I don't know how. Was it natural or not? He was the one that tried reaching out to Box Elder County Sheriff's Office. Is there a coincidence in Box Elder County suddenly going quiet after Mark Ortiz's death? No, probably not. Probably not. But that aside, either Box Elder County are satisfied with their own investigation and evidence found and they feel like they don't need to do any more, or they're stepping back but allowing Candice Cooley and Justin to do their own thing because maybe they feel that the family have got something over them and Box Elder County don't want that, don't want to be shut down, don't want to be investigated or sacked members within, I don't know, but definitely submissiveness all of a sudden, right? Can I think of any polls on the spot? No, I can't remember because I did a poll recently similar to Box Elder County keeping quiet, so I don't need to repeat that. As for the equipment out there during the 6-day search, they had multiple drones. I don't know if it was a full spectral one, but they said they had high-end drones out there, but not elite level, fairly high level, okay? But they could still be used and were usable. Equisearch had some, Chris had his own, I think it was a Phantom 4 or something, able to take multiple pictures, collect multiple data. Candice Cooley has it. It was being downloaded in between days on the search in the camper, and then I guess sent to Equisearch to be analysed. I assume it's still ongoing. It's good though how all the drones were usable and all the pics were and can be analysed. Not much talk about it though. It wasn't, we looked at the photos, we found where Dylan is. We've looked at the photos, we found some new possible leads. It wasn't really worded in any way like that. It was kind of left on a cliffhanger still, possibly because they're still analysing the photos, because I don't know how many were taken. If you had multiple drones taking multiple photos, could be thousands upon thousands of photos, and that might take some, additional time. And then if you do find a couple of photos, you might start then grouping them together, mapping it out, further assessing. Who knows? Share your thoughts down below. I did do a poll on the whole drone thing as well. Would it be successful or not? So I don't need to repeat that poll again. So yeah, that's it for the updated information. Now we move on to additional interesting information regarding the Q&A part within the interview. Now, as you know, when it came to the likes of No Thanks, the structure of the interview was more like we ask questions first from the viewers, collected in, ordered and arranged, read them out, and then you can speak freely, share your own thoughts. This time it was done the opposite way round. I mean, I guess that's useful. Bring up all the newest, latest information first and then group back reinforce, clear up, debunk previous stuff and ongoing questions now. As for the questions asked, not as deep this time, and I didn't come across or hear any that might have been talked about on my channel when it came to certain findings over time. But there was one very, very important point, and it's actually a question I raised back in the past. I just remembered. We're going to get to that later on, okay, so make sure to stick around. It's quite an important one. So, in terms of questions, I've noted it as Candice Cooley's reply to them. So in terms of the gun situation and the key fob, who returned it back? Candice Cooley is like, I don't know. I wish we knew. That would probably reveal it all, right? The person responsible for taking Dylan out, the person who had the key fob and returned it back along with the gun. Same person, right? I mean, yeah. In a way, I kind of agree that it probably is the same person that returned both items back, even if it was on different days, one after the other. I don't know why it wasn't done at the same exact time. Doug brought up the key point, just like how I did in my previous video earlier, saying, if you're going to dispose of the phone in the pond, why not the gun and key fob? Candice Cooley's response to that was, well, probably weren't thinking at the time, the suspect. And I think she worded it more as he. She was probably referring to Brenner, but she didn't want to directly say Brenner because that's going all in, I guess. But she said basically he had the key fob, probably had it in his pocket, forgot all about it, and then remembered afterwards and returned it back. Let's just take in mind that there's been talks that Kurt Wadsworth had the key fob in his pocket. Maybe he did, but I don't know if it's at the same time or it might have been confused with something in the past, right? I mean, Candice still hasn't referred too much about Kurt Wadsworth, right? Not much. She's more focusing on Brenner having the key fob, right? Thinking that Brenner's forgetful, whether that's because he's drunk or not, in a fit of rage, leading to memory loss, not being able to collect one's thoughts. Weird things can happen there. She thinks that Brenner took, this is where she did refer back to Brenner directly at this point. Candice Cooley then said Brenner took Dylan's truck, likely returned it back, and then went on to visit Don Hateley. So it seems like Candice is fixed on the idea that Dylan's truck was used and Brenner was behind the wheel. Okay? Just like that. Certainty now. How Candice Cooley thinks and what she believes in, right? Now, what was the next question? More to do with the land. I know people have brought up themselves. Who owns the land? What about the property lines and boundaries? Candice Cooley replied and said, there are many owners out there who own different parts of land in Lucin, several, but they aren't present. They don't live there, they don't visit, they probably just buy it for something to do with tax or offloading money, or maybe some kind of benefit down the line, that type of stuff. So there isn't too much going on there. She did say that she knows some of the people that own the land there, such as the grain shed, but that's not important. That's irrelevant. So we're hearing that again, that shut off. It's not important, so we don't need to talk about it. But then again, if Chase Venstra isn't that important because he's never a part of the investigation to begin with, as quoted by, supposedly, the LE, then why are we still talking about it now? Why is Candice Cooley still referring to Chase Venstra if she knows, if the LE know, that he was never a part of the investigation? Slight contradiction there, though, isn't there? Because there have been some things that may be arguably irrelevant but still talked about now. But just because this one is irrelevant to her mind, then it doesn't have to be talked about whatsoever. Slight little contradiction there, that's all I'm saying, okay? Anything else? Yeah. Another contradiction. Candice Cooley then went on to reply to Doug's, saying, how can people help? Candice Cooley said she wants people to keep Dylan's name out there. She wants general public, which could be online in real life, could be a poster, could be bino seeds or those like beads patterns, or even on YouTube covering videos. Candice Cooley wants people to keep the case alive. Isn't that what Ty and Lance are doing? Isn't that what Jim Terry, Salty Pancakes, the Shack Lady, kind of, even if it is arguably from other people's perspectives for the wrong reasons, still keeping the case alive? You see what I'm saying? Good publicity, bad publicity, it does not matter, providing it keeps something in line, talked about all the time and on the front page. Isn't it normally worded like that? Good, bad, doesn't matter the publicity, as long as it's out there and it's being talked about, right? I mean, possibility. You can say there's a slight contradiction there, right? Because earlier on, and in the past, Candice Cooley criticising people for searching for Dylan, handling of stuff wrongly, saying it's this when it's not, spreading misinformation while still technically keeping the case alive, even if it isn't for the right reasons. And now she's saying, yeah, we need to keep it going. We need to keep it alive. That's what those people have been doing, technically speaking. So it's a bit messy, isn't it? You know, you don't want people to cover the case. You don't want people to keep the mystery, the case alive if they're doing it for the wrong reasons. But at the same time, you want people to keep the case alive. That kind of sounds like the whole dirt mound talk. It has been searched, but it hasn't. But it has, but it hasn't. Oh, no. I don't blame anyone if anyone has a headache, okay? If you want to go to the hospital, feel free to do so. Am I the doctor? I don't know. Your choice. Anyway, aside from that dodginess, let's move on to the next key point, okay? Yeah, this is where it gets on to the serious one, in a sense. So when Candice Cooley was referring to how people talk about the case, how people get involved, it tends to be as a form of entertainment. People will watch, listen, maybe even cover it as a form of entertainment if they're not the ones involved. i.e., if you're not experiencing a missing person right now or in the past, you've never gone through that sort of negative event, then most likely your outlook on this case is a form of entertainment, whether you participate or just watch. That's what Candice Cooley is referring to. Now, as we know, there have been a few people over time, whether they appear on my channel or other people's, who have come in to the case, assisting or just watching or sharing their thoughts because they've experienced something very similar themselves. Supposedly the Shack Lady has experienced it. Is it Starla or Starlight? Can't remember the person's name. They also experienced someone going missing or something like that, and some other people as well, and then reached out to Candice Cooley and then she got blocked. So yeah, a little bit weird that. Do you agree that the Dylan Rounds case is a form of entertainment to you, or are you interested in it but also wanting Dylan to be found? You know, certain words can be twisted, right? Now, this is the thing. I mean, I've not, well, yeah, once again. Links once again. Kenny Veach case. How did I get involved in that in the first place? How did certain things lead to certain reasoning abilities at the time? Oh, Raf, how do you question this? How do you question that? How did you even pick up on this in the first place? If you want a deep psychological assessment of myself, there'll be a link down below in the comment section. I'll even post it in the comment section right now. And those explanations of that case tie in with this case, because technically I have experienced someone faking their own death indirectly, but technically faking their own death. Okay, so more about that in that other video if you want to check it out. But yeah, I've experienced it. Now we move on to the serious part. Okay, as I've clearly said, when I've covered this case, I can think this way and that way. I can question this and that. I don't break down or anything like that, but it's obvious because I'm not directly involved. I'm not suffering. I'm not, you know, a part of the family or a friend of Dylan. So obviously I'm not going to feel anything, which sounds like a psychopath, but at the same time, it prevents any biasness. It provides balance. Opinions and thoughts aren't clouded by judgment, right? Because you're taking it all into mind. Whereas if you know of Dylan, or if you know of someone within the case involved, you might defend them, or you might not look into something because it's a bit awkward or you don't want to. So I've mentioned that before. Now, in terms of the entertainment part, I mean, yeah, I don't think you can get away from it. Certain parts is entertainment and it's very awkward, but it's also makes sense in a way. It's weird. It's I mean, like, well, what's a real life example? You'll see it many times in public. If there's a car crash or the people that suddenly stop, stand still, get the phones out and record and they think that's a good idea, or encourage someone to jump off a bridge, that happens. It will happen. It's probably happening right now. You see it several times in the UK, especially with accidents, crashes. Everyone's just all staring like sheep. It's like, you enjoying it? You see this as entertainment? That doesn't seem to be talked about though, does it? But it does within the Dylan Rounds case. And as well, if it is supposedly this type of stuff, mainly the coverage, if this stuff is supposedly classified as entertainment and poor taste, and like people over time, the odd viewers have said, oh, you shouldn't be covering this, you shouldn't be making that video, it's not right, it's not good, it doesn't help, blah, 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 blah. But I thought it does matter, entertainment or not, it's keeping the case alive. It's spreading awareness on the Dylan Rounds case, the search bar, the search terms. Isn't that what Candice Cooley wanted? But then she says she doesn't, but now she says she does. Contradictions. And on top of that, when it comes to the, whether it's entertainment or not, covering the case, if you take that away, there can be several other things lost. And it depends if people want that to happen. What am I talking about? Well, with time, and it probably would have happened with other channels, other cases, other topics, other themes. But in my case, my experience, over time, the odd few people have reached out privately, and I won't go into detail, have thanked me because the videos have helped them, whether it be a distraction, whether it be some kind of positive boost or something. Mainly more of a distraction if they're going through something negative. Hell, at times, the odd person reached out and said that these videos I have made have stopped them from committing suicide, okay? So, if a human, whoever it is, came in and said, you know, you need to be ashamed of yourself for covering the Dylan Rounds case and making these videos, or the Kenny Veach ones, you know, it's all negative, you shouldn't be doing it, take that away. Well, if you take that away, you're basically assisting in taking someone else's life away. Because if those videos never existed, then people might have, you know, done something and then died. So it's one of those kind of balancing acts that within these cases, it might be the coverage, a little bit of lightheartedness at times to, you know, lighten the mood, but at the same time still trying to cover it and maintain balance. Okay, it's a very tricky combination, but it can be done. And to an extent, at times, I have demonstrated it. Okay, you take that away, who knows what chaos could emerge, right? So, how would I word it? I mean, tying in line with you cover a case or you move on to a community, then you come across key individuals. I mean, you know, like, I can't refer back now because of memory and stuff, but came across some key individuals within the Kenny Veach case, come across some key individuals within the Dylan Rounds case, like Cleo, Christy, Moonshine. You could say Bungee Cord, he came from the Kenny Veach case as well. And obviously some others I can't think on the spot with memory. but you can say that with these different cases, although a life might have been lost or gone missing, it's led to other people finding one another or making friends. So that's like a side positive. And if you want to go a bit deeper, whilst the odd case, true crime thing might have ended badly, it's led to an external life being saved. Okay? So that's how you can word it in that way. It is a positive, but at the same time, it doesn't bandage over the actual reality we're dealing, because that's still ongoing. So you've got to be realistic, you've got to be sharp and keep on, looking at it. So that's it for that part of the notes. Is there anything on the back sheet? No. Move on to some more notes, okay? Just make sure I've got it in order. It's kind of a weird setup, this. We'll just have a very miniature break, okay? Miniature break. Basically, when I've done this with the odd few notes, you want to know, well, I can't show you because the phone's there, but basically, sat on the bed, facing the window looking out, tripod on the windowsill, phone, front-facing camera, facing me, you see the backdrop. Just below the phone, a piece of paper is stood up like this under the phone. It's resting on the neck rester, the grey neck rester, which is wedged in between the windowsill and the radiator. It acts as a little table to hold the paper up as the paper rests against the tripod. And then I've got a black t-shirt behind that to prevent light shining through the paper so I can actually read the text. Really advanced, isn't it? But it works. At least it's not gone too dark yet. I don't think I need to put the light on yet. Once before, when I was doing a video in the past, it got so dark that I think at one point all you could see was my eyes. And I'm white. Fuck me, that must have been dark that time. But yeah, there you go. That's a little break there. I mean, a bit of a abrupt change, isn't it? From motels, wackiness to locked on, serious information, key updates and all of that. It's full on. But this is what we've been awaiting. Cliffhanger period, and then eventually more information comes out. And so far in the chat, leave your thoughts down below. Have you heard of this information before? Excluding actually watching this whole interview with Doug before that. Are you shocked, surprised by any of it? Leave your thoughts down below, okay? Now, as I said, I don't know if there's an intro or an outro to this video at this moment in time. The reason why I say that, the reason why there might not be any music, just for now, is because the whole copyright claim. It's okay now, it's under control. My previous video, copyright claim has been removed, but as said, I had to take a portion out, the audio, okay? So if you used to watch it back now for whatever reason, it's fine, there's no issues. And what's the big problem with copyright? We'll just briefly talk about it now. I think it applies to donations, super thanks and a super chat. If you don't know what a super thanks or a super chat is, I guess it's just a form of donation, but it's not directly done in a prostitution style way. It's more of a sign of support because you can share a little emoji or bright colours that appear on screen. That's where you see that like box in the chat, and it gives a certain figure of how much someone has donated, and it gives you the option to choose whatever amount you want. Now, I do remember briefly in the past during some person's live stream, a person donated $500 to someone, but it was an accident. Now, luckily you can get refunds. Now, it sounds a bit silly me saying that because probably everyone's going to think now, shit, we need to get a refund on this channel. No, but on that other person's video back then, what I saw, that $500 donation, the person who, donated it, they weren't in control of the account at the time. It was one of their family members' younger child that did it. And then when it was retracted, everyone went over to the channel demanding, saying, well, where's it gone? Why were you messing him around? You know, what about all the money? And then the person had to make an apology video explaining what actually went on, that the younger child family member donated it himself and got a hold of the account. Ooh, very messy. But as I was saying, linking back to the super chat and super thanks, that being activated. If you don't know what it is or where it's located on the screen, it's on the right hand side of where you see the chat box. Below that, where like the emoji buttons are, there should be a symbol of a dollar symbol. You click on that and then it gives a range of different options. I think it's super chat, super thanks, join membership on the channel where you get exclusive badges and stuff like that, or it's a gift membership, which was done previously, I think, with mystery gifting to Christy at some point or something. So, you know, there's all different options, which is useful, which is good. But that aside, the importance of that was, does it impact when you've got a copyright claim? Basically, if a video has a copyright claim, any type of monetization will go directly to that copyright holder. So if you uploaded music into your video, and let's say your video got 20 million views, and if it was monetized in any shape or form, that money would go to the copyright holder of that music, not yourself. So I think that ties in with the whole super thanks, super chat. So if people was to, like, you know, give a donation in that way, then technically that money isn't going to the content creator, it's going to that music composer. And it's like, we don't want that twat over there getting the money. What have they done? They don't even own the music. And that's exactly how it was with that previous video. Luckily, there was no complications, no one got in a sticky situation with the donation, so that was all under control, But I guess if it did backfire or something, I said you probably can get a refund as well, most likely. So there's always like a backdoor way out to fix things. But as I was saying, as for the videos now and that previous one, no copyright claims, no more. Everything is clean, under control, okay? Now, after this break, okay, we can return back right now to more information and points talked about within the Dylan Rounds case, okay? So, tying on with the rubbish heap or scrapyard thing to do with Don Hateley, originally giving a tip to the police saying, you need to go to the mountains. We've seen the mountains which merge between Montello, Nevada and Lucin, Utah, okay? And in the mountains, that's where Don said you had to go. Candice Cooley confirmed in this interview, this recent one, saying the location of that tip was in fact Pilot Mountain. Fuck me. You've seen Pilot Mountain, the height, the elevation, and I assume right at the top as well. If you haven't seen actual images, make sure to check out one of my previous videos on the place, okay? Because I did a 360-degree photo analysis of photos taken by other people uploaded onto Google Earth. We took a look, and the distance, the height right at the very top, you saw all kinds of stuff. It was really good, that, and some other very dodgy things further east off Lucin. Make sure to check that out. But yeah, that area, when comparing it to Google Earth, didn't really see that much, to be fair. Yet Candice Cooley said when Don H was interrogated by the police afterwards, because it was a 4-hour journey up to Pilot Mountain, and they weren't too pleased because nothing was there, nothing was found, despite Don saying there was scrap and rubbish up there. Don Hateley's excuse afterwards when questioned was, I saw it on Google Earth. And Candice Cooley said, well, he said a different thing. He lied. He said something else previously. I mean, if he's using Google Earth as an example, as some kind of excuse for the tip, I've already looked at Google Earth I've already looked at Pilot Mountain and I didn't find much. You know, I looked thorough. I didn't find lots of rubbish. I didn't find scrap cards, junk. Did you? I didn't. But yeah, this just confirms the whole location about that tip by Don Hateley. I'll rephrase it one more time. Don Hateley, in the early days of the Dylan Rounds case, sent a tip to the police to go to Pilot Mountain because that's where rubbish was, and that could have been where the whole spring cleaning of bags were taken to. The second part of that point about the bin bags and spring cleaning was tied with a question by the general public associating one thing with another, and that might have been why, but it wasn't the case in the end, right? But how did the police get to Pilot Mountain? Helicopter? Climbing up it? Hiking? I mean, yeah, general public have done it themselves, but the time it takes, the effort and exertion, it looked very steep in some areas. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but it did look pretty rough. So I don't know how things quite worked out there, but yeah, I couldn't understand why the police were annoyed. You know, wasting police time is one thing, and then wasting a lot of police time all the way up there for nothing. That's not good, right? But you know what? Isn't it a little bit interesting though, how supposedly Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds, the Rounds and Cooley family have been mocked, joked about, messed around by the LE, Box Elder County, and yet it was Don Hateley that messed around the LE. Bit of a taste of their own medicine in a way. Even if Don Hateley is a bad individual or is tied within the case, do you think it's kind of interesting how, you know, Box Elder County messing people around, and then when someone else does it to them, oh, they don't like it. They get all bitchy and moany and aggressive. Don't you think? Kind of like that behavioural change with one of the detectives or one of the sheriffs with his wife that confronted Candice Cooley in the middle of the desert, and it was a 2-on-1 situation. You remember that one as well? And the body language, hands on hips, assertive, dominance, leaning over Candice, and Candice is the only one there. Well, from the looks of it, 1-on-2. She handled herself at that point. So you kind of see how things are and certain behaviour, how behaviour is okay here, but it's not there. You know, roles are reversed, bit of double standards, right? So yeah, now the only other key point that was mentioned on from that, the whole Don Hateley tip, and it did make me think, okay, if anyone knows right now, feel free to answer, but basically, Candice Cooley was saying something to Chris from the mob crew, saying, yeah, Don Hateley talking about the rubbish, like scrap found on the mountain, you know, mob crew, you know, Chris, kind of similar to, you know, where the cars are, the rubbish, which is behind Dylan's farm. What? What cars? What scrap behind Dylan's farm? Take in mind, when they say Dylan's farm, they don't mean the grain shed, they mean Dylan's farm over that way. So you've got sun tunnels down here, turn right, go that way, east, and that's where Dylan's farm, 5 miles over that way from the grain shed. And she said below the farm, so over there, below south, there are some cars and scrap. When I heard that, I assumed the chop shop, the scrap yard in the middle of the desert. But that isn't below Dylan's farm. It's probably more diagonal, and it's over on the other side. Do you understand? I think we could do a separate video on this, but I think it's very important that we just head on over there right now, just so I can describe it to you visually, because I'm not sure if this is tying in with what Candice Cooley is saying in terms of what's in my mind. Let's head on over there right now on the spot and let me know if you agree or not. So here we are. Apologies if the volume sounds a little bit different. It's because I'm slightly further back because I've still got the same setup and layout as what I did just before when you saw me sat down speaking. I might as well keep it stood up as it is. Okay, bear with me. So, grain shed is here. Okay, the grain shed is here. I'll even drop the coordinates let's just say if you were confused, if you didn't know where the grain shed was at for whatever reason, the coordinates are on screen right now, okay? Bear in mind, Dylan does not own this land or the grain shed, but he was planning on doing so in the future, okay? Grain shed there. When Candice Cooley was referring to the farm, that wasn't it. In terms of Pilot Mountain, we can just refer to that quickly. It's along the border, as said, here, between Nevada and Utah, okay, the border. Bald Eagle Mountain is over that way where Tynelands have been, and kind of Scott Natal. In terms of Pilot Mountain, I mean, we've got Pilot Peak here. I assume that's the same thing. Do you know what? I'll even type it in now, just to double check there's no harm. Oops. Lucin, Pilot Mountain. Does it come up with the same thing? Pilot Mountain Road? Well, that's on lower ground. So I assume Pilot Peak is the same as Pilot Mountain, really. So you got the idea of where that was, which was here, which is pretty high up. Now, at the time when they went, there wouldn't have been snow because of the time of the season, though there probably is now. So it wouldn't have been a problem at the time in terms of the weather, but it still would have took time and effort to get there, as said. Now, as for Dylan's farm, as most of you are probably aware, I'll just flip the screen so we're back into position. Okay, just bear with me for a second. Zoom in here. See, you see how you can lose track of things when you haven't got the markers on. Grain shed over that way. Come down here. Sun tunnels, as I said, you take a turn right here, so you go east, and you basically follow that all the way down to Dylan's farm. As you can see, that little field there with the track marks, and then that's where his trailer would have been. Bear in mind, 2019 imagery doesn't show it, but this is where he was. This is the coordinates of Dylan's farm, in case you didn't know already, okay? And this is where Candice Cooley was referring to by the mob crew, saying, yeah, at Dylan's farm, just behind it is where the scrap and the cars were found, you know, that type of stuff. Now, with it being 2019 imagery, that's probably why it doesn't show up, because I can't really see any scrap, you know, cars or anything in this spot behind, south of the farm. And I have done a deep, detailed analysis of Lucin already. Make sure to check that out. It's available on my channel. Though, there is like a scrapyard, a chop shop, but it's across over this way, right? I'll be honest with you, I don't know if I can truly find it on the spot. I think it's over here. If I don't find it immediately, I might have to cut to one of the projects. Let's just see, because I want it to be natural at the same time. You know what I'm saying? That's too low down. It's where you saw a lot of holes as well in the ground. Oh, have I found it? It's round this area, okay? That's where the holes are. Is it here? Oh, shit. You see how difficult it is to find at times? It's crazy. There you go. Fuck me. Well done, Raf. There's the coordinates for the chop shop, okay? Make sure to note them down. Still, it's not really been talked about much, the chop shop, and I don't think anyone has visited it or questioned it. But if this is what Candice Cooley was referring to, let's just check the, not so much the distance, but the angling of it, okay? Is it behind Dylan's farm or not? Just zoom out for a second so I'm just aware of my surrounding, okay? Dylan's farm here. So, Dylan's farm to this chop shop, if it's what Candice Cooley is referring to, there is an 8-mile distance between the two locations. And can I put the marker down? Forget about the distance, what it's reading on screen, but just look at the yellow line for a second. It's diagonal. So technically it's behind the farm of Dylan, but it's a bit of distance away, 8 miles. And on top of that, it's not south, it's southeast. Okay, because it's at an angle between south and east. So it's southeast. Does anyone know if this down here is the location what Candice was referring to in that video or not? Okay. Is this the correct place when she said about the cars and the scrap? Or is there another location closer to Dylan's farm? Let me know down below. As I said, bear in mind, 2019 imagery. This area did not exist like in 2016, 2013, right? Limited dates because of Google Earth Pro, only recording imagery at certain times of the year or skipping the odd year, okay? This showed up in 2019 and I think it remained in 2020, if I'm correct in saying. But as before that, it didn't exist. So unless this location moved again and there's a closer scrapyard, I'm not too sure, but just wanted to bring it up because the way Candice Cooley described it was as described as this. All the cars scattered about and junk and scrap. Leave your thoughts down below, okay? What you think? I could do a poll as well, okay? Let's just do a poll as well because some people might not want to type in the live chat, okay? Is this place on screen, as I've described, the same place Candice Cooley was referring to in that interview as I described? Yes or no? Okay? Now, let's return back and continue on with the key bits of information from the interview. So here we are, we return. I don't know if you noticed already, but are you impressed by my giant banana? Is it big enough? I want to know your thoughts. Leave your thoughts down below. Is the banana decent in size? Mine. You can see it resting just over there. Yeah. Why is it there? I don't know. But it's just a different prop of the day, okay? So let's move on to the next key point mentioned, okay? And just a brief one talking about the whole spring cleaning. Candice saying June the 16th was when the first search warrant was underway on Jim Brenner's property, his trailer. So he had 14 days to not only dispose of evidence, but also to clear up, tidy up his own trailer, just in case any other items were scattered about, right? So he had a decent time window to act on things, right? Or have other people step in and help as well. So as well, in that time frame, I think Candice Cooley worded it as there was zero police presence. And obviously with zero police presence, anything could have happened in between then. Random people could have just gone onto the land and they would have gotten away with it from the looks of it, okay? So let's move on to the next one, and this is where it gets very important. You remember what I said earlier on in this video? Very important question, finally answered, and it could provide some interesting thoughts, ideas, and theories regarding this. So make sure you are listening. Are you ready? So it's to do about the gas. Mob crew Chris asked Candice in the interview, I think I've already told you before, but Candice, how much gas was left in Dylan's truck, the Ford F-150 Burgundy truck of Dylan's, which we saw found parked at Dylan's trailer with the pipe supposedly being cleaned down, wrapped around the outside of it near the wheel. You remember that truck, yeah? Same one that Justin broke into. Same one which the seat was adjusted and locked up and the gun was missing from it. Okay, so we're talking about that one. Candice Cooley explained about it, and this is kind of like a timeline as well. Okay, so just take this in mind. And I can go back over it in a second if it doesn't quite make sense. Candice Cooley's response to the gas question situation was, on the 26th of May, the truck of Dylan's, which Dylan was driving at the time, was filled up in Montello on the 26th. That would have been a Thursday. Then it was driven back by Dylan on the 27th, Friday. That coincided on the same day later on where Dylan was planting his seed late at night, 11:30 p.m. to 11:45 p.m. Okay, does that make sense? And then taking it into mind, theorizing now that from going to using that vehicle at this stage, the likes of someone like Brenner, using the vehicle to dispose of Dylan, driving it to a classified place where the family have been searching in, then returning that truck back to Dylan's trailer to make it seem like it's all okay and normal. It matches perfectly with the gas consumption of when it was filled up on the 26th and the amount of distance covered from then till when finally disposing of Dylan and returning the truck back. That's what Candice Cooley said, matches perfectly. 65 miles covered. That's interesting, because previously we were wondering, what about the vehicle data, the black box, the distance within that? We never knew because it was deleted. As we know, when the family drove the truck, when they were given the green tick, go ahead by the LE, as soon as they started driving, that data recorded from the last 100 miles was lost. So you might be wondering, yeah, well, if the data's been lost, how does Candice Cooley know about all of this? Well, it's more to do with piecing it together, right? Visualizing as well as tying in with certain facts. From the looks of it, it's a fact that on the 26th, Dylan was in Montello and he filled his truck up. And it was also a fact that on the 27th, he returned back to Lucin, his farm, to do the seeding. That's reinforced by, I guess, eyewitnesses in Montello, Saddle Sore Bar, and also eyewitnesses in Lucin by those campers who saw it when Dylan was seeding. Then the next part about, going to that classified location as if that's where the truck went to dispose of Dylan, that's where the theorizing comes in. And I guess they must have measured distance to gas consumption. You probably could work it out mathematically, okay? And that's how they did it. So however much gas was left in the tanker at the time from when Dylan drove it factually, and then adding in the possible distance of a location being searched in, of where the truck could have gone to dispose of Dylan, and then it being returned back, tying in with the correct mileage and the correct gas consumption and gas remaining within the tank. Does that make sense? Correct me if I'm wrong, or if there's another fact that's not been included, but that's basically how it was worded within the interview. And it's quite important because I guess in a way it's hard to try and guess where the truck would have gone. I mean, you can tie it in with the tyre mark tracks. Maybe that's what they did. They probably used the tyre mark tracks with the wash, or a wash out there, we should say, right? And thought, right, how much gas would have been in his truck at this point? This much. Okay, then let's check the distance from Dylan's trailer, Dylan's farm, to those track mark locations, and then to the location we're searching in right now, and then return it back. I think they were able to tie it in together, tying pieces of a jigsaw puzzle into one, right? Piecing it all together. I can kind of understand it and visualize it right now. It's basically kind of like what I've done with the Kenny Veach case, with certain routes, distance, timing, factors involved. Hopefully you can understand it and follow along. If not, maybe rewatch the video or rewind that part of the video back and try and visualize it, okay? So if it just so happens to match perfectly, as Candice Cooley describes, then the area they've been searching in must be the area where Dylan Rounds is at, right? But they've not found Dylan yet. But I think they're still analysing photos. And if not that, they said they're going to go back over and comb over the place again, and then somewhere else again, to tick things off. So it's a matter of waiting to see what happens next. But I guess depending how you interpret it and how you see it worded, you could think, well, they must be on the right land, heading in the right direction. It's just a matter of finding a needle in a haystack within that designated spot, right? Now, that level of certainty could be not exactly true. Might sound a bit silly, that. I've got something in my eye. I'm just trying to tie it in with similar behaviour in the past. Now, it might be different, this, because this might be more factual, okay? Take that in mind. It might be more factual, this. But when Kenny Veach went missing, and you had the likes of Sean Horlacker, a local, searching quite frequently or going in deep by himself, when he was talking about returning back there, starting a GoFundMe so he can get equipment, he can bring a team, when he was wording it at the time, you know, the language used, being specific, being confident, getting that message across, he said, within a certain mileage and square grid, there's a 96% chance that's where Kenny is at. We're going to go there, we're going to retrieve him, and there we go, mission complete. But first you need to donate to the GoFundMe. And then fast forward with like the CCTV break-in of Kenny Veach alive in 2018, not in the desert. Some family members confirming it. And then Sean Horlacker at a later point, the next year, ended up returning back and saying, I saw Kenny Veach homeless when I was driving by. You see what I'm saying? So sometimes when people appear confident or certain, it's not always going to turn out well. Maybe it's a different case this time because it's just a different case, different set of people, right? They'll probably have more information than in the Kenny Veach case. But I'm just doing comparisons, okay? No harm in that. So hopefully that key part about the gas situation filled in your blank spots or added more points to question. If you disagree with any of it, feel free to state it down below in the comment section, okay? Let's move on to the next part, okay? Candice Cooley was saying about Chase Venstra's whereabouts. So people were still adding in questions there. And like I said earlier when I said, oh, if Chase Venstra is irrelevant or not a part of the investigation, then why is he still being talked about now? And then why are you saying irrelevant to do with people owning the land? A bit of contradiction there, isn't it? A bit hypocritical. Well, that aside, I guess it's just reinforcing it just to dispel the rumours and confusion about Chase. Like, is the evidence really true? And someone was referring to the whole Clinton situation, saying, well, actually, there is no KFC in Clinton. Yeah. You know why they question that in the live stream? It's because they've been watching my fucking KFC and Little Caesars analysis videos where I was looking at every single one in the area. And I was one of the first back then that said, yeah, but KFC, there's a couple of them, but they're nowhere within Clinton. Clinton is like a neighbourhood, and it's outside of that neighbourhood border where KFC is, along one of the main roads. So someone brought it up in the live chat, so they must have been influenced by my video. Well, there's a chance they've been influenced. And that's where they were saying, well, if you said it was there, but it's not quite, then are you sure that information is reliable? Candice Cooley responded back and said, well, the info about Chase's whereabouts and the CCTV footage came from the FBI. They're the ones that passed it on. So you'd think that's probably reliable information, right? More so than the LE. FBI, as we've heard, still assisting to this date. Seems somewhat helpful. Do you think they're helpful? Although they've not played a main role because they can't, do you think the FBI providing information on Chase's whereabouts is reliable or not? Okay, leave your thoughts in the chat, okay? Do a poll as well, so you can vote. Next point. Candice Cooley, when talking about the area in general of Lucin and Dylan's whereabouts, someone said, oh, it could be 33 miles out of Lucin or something. Candice Cooley responded back and said, well, actually, roughly talking in how she said it, strongly believes that he's in the area of Lucin somewhere. Can't be anywhere else. It wouldn't make any sense. That's what Candice Cooley said. But what you got to take in mind, okay, it might not make any sense to why Dylan would be anywhere else. But what you must also understand, it doesn't make sense why the phone was disposed of, thrown into the pond, which was a key bit of evidence and a form of tracing, right? The ping, getting rid of that. It's important to get rid of it when disposing of someone. Dispose of the phone, then dispose of the person, so you're not tracked as good. That's normal, right? That's what a criminal would do, a murderer. But then why return other items back to the scene of the crime or one of the crime scenes or places of interest? That doesn't make sense. And you can look at my most recent video about that on my channel. Make sure to do that because it's very, very deep, and it highlights how you got a hierarchy of evidence. Some evidence is significantly more important than other evidence, but at the end of the day, some of the least important evidence was disposed of better than the more important stuff, and that the more important stuff was returned rather than disposed of. That's what doesn't make sense. So, where Candice Cooley said it doesn't make sense Dylan is elsewhere, it would make sense because the whole case is confusing. So anything goes, in my mind. That's just my opinion, but leave your thoughts down below. Now, there's a few little key points on the back of the paper. Bear in mind, I didn't want to use up too much paper. Okay, now this text is a little bit, I used an orange highlighter. I can't even read it myself, so it's probably going to be like an eye test, okay? Candice Cooley then went on to say about Brenner never drived his vehicle, his truck, on the highway. Just a random point, but it was tying in to do with Dylan. Where else would he be taken? It wouldn't make any sense. You know, if Brenner doesn't drive on the highway, then he's probably not going to drive on the highway when it comes to Dylan, meaning he probably didn't drive to Montello, Bald Eagle Mountain, blah, 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 there. But there's a but, obviously, okay? I'll just throw in one extra point. Candice Cooley said Brenner would normally get a lift from Dylan or Don Hateley to different locations. I can tie this all in with a counterpoint, okay? Sure, Brenner probably didn't drive on the highway for whatever reason, whether it's because he's drunk, he doesn't want to get arrested, stopped by the police for reasons, he don't want to, you know, go to jail because he might be doing something illegal, who knows? Candice Cooley said he probably didn't have a driver's license or it expired, so he could have got arrested for that. So, you know, keeping away, keeping a low profile, just like how he does when he lives. Okay, but Dylan could still have been disposed of further afar. Just because Brenner doesn't drive on the highway, don't mean to say there's no other alternatives, because there is, as said by Ty Corbin, and as demonstrated by my map analysis video. You can do the back roads of Lucin, as described by Candice Cooley, and going through those back roads, which only Brenner did, meaning he did drive his truck on the dirt roads. He could have gone over Patterson Pass within the mountain region to branch on over into Nevada, Montello, and either go to Bald Eagle Mountain, turn right, or, where there's roads, or go into Montello more discreetly, away from the highway over there, going the back roads, the dirt roads, off-road, away from it all. And he did drive round there. So it's kind of irrelevant what Candice Cooley said then, right? If there's other alternatives, and he has driven in those areas, then that might be where he could have gone when disposing of Dylan. Not saying he went right into Montello, but he could have used those back roads to go to this desired location where Candice Cooley is investigating right now, or the supposed wash, okay? And as well, even if Brenner didn't drive his vehicle much, meaning he wouldn't have gone that far with Dylan, if he did get lifts from either Dylan or Don, well, there's only one other person involved then, Don Hateley. Whether it be during the time of the barbecue or maybe before that, okay? Dylan might have already been taken out. Brenner went to Don's and said, hey, can you help me? Can you give me a lift somewhere to, dispose? You know what I'm saying? There's always alternatives. So you can't just rule it out completely, okay? Now, next point. Candice Cooley referring back to Lucin, saying Lucin is not a drug-running place. And I think that was to do with the question of, do you think Dylan could have been taken out because when Dylan went to the grain shed, there was some kind of drug dealing going on in there, or there was something inside which Dylan wasn't supposed to see? If Brenner was under the impression that Dylan wasn't there for a month or so and thought he was elsewhere doing custom farming, then no one would see what's going on inside of the shed during that absence of Dylan. I had that condition on, okay, from my own mind. But that's the case. Candice Cooley said there's no drug running in the area, okay? That could be the case. I mean, you can't really see the crime rates in Lucin. I tried searching, but there doesn't seem to be any. There is with Montello, but it's very outdated with what I saw. If you know of any crime which has occurred in Lucin within the past 3 to 4 years, list it down below. Or if you know a link to a website of Lucin crime, or even Box Elder County, let's say, which is nearby, east, list it down below. The crimes, the stats, percentages, or just the link to the website that provides that data, right? Just to see if what Candice Cooley says is true. Because let's not forget, it was Robert Aviles. Although he's not tied with the Dylan Rounds case, it was Robert Aviles who was arrested, I believe, in Box Elder County, and in his vehicle he had drugs. So was he drug running, driving through Lucin to go to Box Elder County and then getting apprehended there? Which would mean there's kind of drug running in the area, going through Lucin, passing through. With all the shortcuts and dirt roads, all the track marks we've seen, things could go on there, right? And then it would go against what Candice Cooley said. Candice Cooley doesn't live there, so she'll only know so much, right? If it comes to asking locals about, is there any crime going on in this area? Is there any drugs? There's a chance they're probably not going to say anything, right? Because they could be involved as well. Got to take that into mind, okay? So with that aside, Candice Cooley was saying about the phone RTT data. I don't know what RTT means. Real-time talk? Real-time something? I'm not quite sure. You'll probably know it more than me. But we're saying that the data states a different story. Because Doug in the interview was saying, oh, I think that Dylan was taken care of, taken out inside of the grain shed and then left. And then the day after, disposed of, hidden, buried. Candice Cooley replied and said, well, actually, the phone data of Dylan's, I assume, states Dylan was disposed of the same day, the 28th. It all happened on the 28th. So is that another key lead? Just like with the whole gas consumption, tying in with 65 miles covered to there, and there and back. Leave your thoughts, because there seems to be some very interesting information coming out here, which I've not heard of before. Very, very interesting information, which still has a bit of a cliffhanger to it, for obvious reasons, if it is of a key location. Because I can kind of understand it now, where if this is to do with the wash, or a wash somewhere, that's why they're not saying the location, because with this data that's being mentioned later on in this interview, people could go down there and mess it up in some way. Maybe not purposely, but you know, kind of just get in the way. So that's interesting. Anything else? Candice Cooley also said Brenner has not ever said, I didn't hurt Dylan. And Candice Cooley was referring to Brenner from the day one, the beginning of the case. So whether he was questioned by the police, questioned by the family, when he was in his trailer, or even in jail, or being released and then going back to jail. You know, whatever questions were asked his way, including the lie detector test, polygraph test, which still has not been talked about or revealed yet. So that could be something. But yeah. So if someone went up to him, Brenner, and said, you know, what have you done? Have you seen anything? Are you responsible? This evidence proves you are. This proves you have been here. Your behavioural patterns and this evidence found links and associates with you, Brenner. Or even that call with Karen. Was it called Karen? Yeah, I think it is Karen. The grandmother of the Rounds family, grandmother of Dylan, that called out Brenner because of the evidence and the recent updates. And Brenner just simply said, you can call my lawyer, conversation is over and done with. He didn't deny it. He didn't resist. He just said, nope, no comment. Now, normally people say no comment when they're either trying to be smart and because they're actually guilty in some way. And maybe that's where all highlighted during that polygraph test. Maybe in that polygraph test, it said something like, did you hurt Dylan? Did you kill Dylan? And that's the one time where Brenner, behind closed doors, said no. And it was a lie. Just a guess, that's all, okay? That might have been the only time when parents weren't present. But yeah, do you think it's odd? I'll do a poll right now. Do you think it's odd? No, not odd. Do you think Brenner is 100% guilty if he's never come out with the line, I didn't hurt Dylan? What do you think? Yes, no, a little bit, you don't know? Leave your thought and vote above in the chat, because it's one of those things, to be honest, where Kurt Wadsworth was more defensive than Brenner when it came to Dylan. You know, what's happened to Dylan? Are you involved? And I think Kurt at one point was like, no, man, he's my best friend. You know, I don't know who's done this. I mean, what we've got to understand, it can get very complex and messy, okay? And we'll just describe it as an overall, any day, any life situation, serious or not. If you get called out for supposedly being accused of doing something, if you keep quiet completely, you don't talk about it, you don't refer to it, you don't answer the question, you can be seen as suspicious, like you're hiding something, you're trying to lay low, you're trying to deflect, avoid, run away from the question, meaning you must be, you know, tied with it in some way, directly or not. It makes you look suspicious. But equally, times where people might have got very defensive, such as aggression, physical or verbal, that's another sign that they're probably responsible. They're getting aggressive because they don't like what's being said. It feels like people are getting too close to the truth, so that individual wants them to back off, almost retaliate, scare the person off, say, stop asking questions, you don't want to know the truth. And their response to pushing the people away is seen as suspicious, because there's no need to get aggressive, there's no need to get defensive if you're innocent, right? But then it has been argued other times where if you're innocent, keep moving on in life, don't look behind, don't talk about the stuff, don't drag up the past, keep quiet and keep on doing you. That's what's advised by positive people. And that's kind of like what Brenner has done. Kept on doing his own thing, which might have been being a lazy bastard, but keeping up with that and not having to answer to someone because he knows he's innocent. Now, what would have happened if Brenner said, oh, for God's sake, leave me alone, man. I didn't touch him. I didn't do anything. I'm doing my own thing. I don't give a fuck about Dylan. If he responded like that, as well, verbally aggressive, how would that have been interpreted then by the family? Oh, he's been aggressive. Oh, he's been defensive. That means he's guilty. Oh, he's going to snap. That's probably what he did with Dylan back then. See, there you go. Evidence. You've revealed your true self now. But obviously that wasn't the case. This case was, oh, he's quiet. He's not saying anything. He's not really reacting. He's not answering the direct question. So he must be hiding something. He must be guilty. Do you see how it's a lose-lose situation? And I'm talking about an everyday, every life situation with another person. You can't really win. Now, in Brenner's situation, it doesn't help with his past criminal history. With his past criminal history and some of the evidence within the case, and probably additional evidence which we've not heard of, it probably does make him more of the guilty individual. But if you had a situation on YouTube where you're accused of something and, you know, you react like this or you react like that and you can't win, then it's like, well, it's kind of unfair. So it's just worth taking that into mind. Would Candice Cooley have interpreted it the same way if Brenner kept quiet? We'll do a quick poll right now, okay? Let's have a drink whilst setting up the poll. So, do you think Candice Cooley would have reacted the same exact way as we saw in this interview if Brenner did say something like, "I've not hurt Dylan," but he said it in a bit of an aggressive tone? Would it have been the same response from being quiet and not answering the question, not saying that line, comparing it to saying that line but in an aggressive tone? Leave your thoughts. Whoa, my throat is getting dry. Anyway, that's probably because I've done it for 3.5 months every single day. Shit. Anyway, actually, I can do some kind of picture thing later on. Final thing, okay? One final additional point. Not exactly significant, but it could provide an understanding to why Brenner appeared how he did in jail. You saw that photo of Brenner dressed in blue, the jail uniform, when he was being sat down. It was during that news report coverage of him, that footage, remember? And you said, okay, he's no longer got a beard, it's been shaved off. He looks a lot slimmer, but he also looks rough. He doesn't look happy. No smile, nothing. Alcohol withdrawal? Possibly, right? But in addition, Candice Cooley did say in the interview, and I think this is a fact, that Brenner did go on a 30-day hunger strike. Pretty extreme. Now, why would he need to do that? You know what I'm saying? Candice Cooley said it was to get away from the general population. General population, i.e. in the prison. That could be the case. It could be some form of attention-seeking behaviour, right? Act out, receive special treatment, get taken away. If Brenner is the type of guy that prefers being by himself, if you act a certain way, you might be taken care of, you might be taken away, you might even be locked up into solitary confinement, you might be on prison watch, something like that. And because Brenner is the type of person to get aggressive at times, snap, get involved in fights with other people, as we've seen. If you're in a prison, if you're in a jail and you're surrounded by other, what do you call them, inmates, there could be a disagreement. It could lead to unnecessary violence and even more problems. And maybe Brenner just doesn't want that. It's not gonna look good, is it? If Brenner has been arrested because of taking Dylan out, supposedly, well, no, let's reword that. It was on gun charges. Okay, let's make sure it's clear. He was arrested on a gun charge. The .22 rifle, Don Hateley, who received it from Brenner to hide, grasped on Brenner, handed it into the FBI and did an interview, grasped on Brenner, which led to the arrest, okay? But in terms of the whole case being built against Brenner, supposedly being responsible for Dylan Round's death, homicide, and going missing, if Brenner was to suddenly get into a fight in jail and, hurt someone, it's not gonna look good on him, is it? Right? So that could be why he wants to get away from it, so he doesn't get triggered, so he doesn't act out, so it doesn't, make him even more of a suspect. You know what I'm saying? That's a possibility. So with the whole hunger strike, 30 days is a long time. Now, did he eat any food whatsoever in that period? I don't know. I mean, if you've got alcohol withdrawal and no food intake, then it seems pretty extreme, right? At his age as well, maybe conditions, it could kill you. If you're a heavy drinker and then suddenly stop, it could end pretty bad. But, with Brenner, he seems to still be alive at this moment in time. And yeah, I don't know if he was actually taken away from the general population or not in jail. If you know, feel free to confirm it, but it can make sense with what I just said before. And yeah, so that concludes it for this video interview analysis breakdown. Hopefully it made sense to you, and if there's any additional points that weren't mentioned, or if you have points of your own, feel free to list them down below in the comment section. And yeah, thanks for watching, appreciate it, and I'll see you next time, whenever that is. For now, good night and goodbye.